Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to BWTM Sports Gaming. Apologies, been away for a while. Not really been in the greatest of health. Nasty cough. No, it's not COVID. Nasty cough and really tired, exhausted, and now I'm making a recovery. So, first and foremost, apologies to those people that I would have either been interviewing or I would have been on their shows. My sincere apologies. I think it's the longest break since doing recordings and live shows in a long while. I don't think I've taken such a long break like this just suddenly. So it's good to be back, and it's kind of forced upon me to come and do this show now because other things have cropped up, which means that the time I set aside to get full recovery and do these shows, I don't have the time for that now. So it's the way that it is. So I will do an end of year review. But while I was in my bed resting, the subject matter is Anthony Joshua. I don't like talking about this subject all the time because people think I'm hating or I'm picking on him, or it's not about that. But what it is about is a real concern. This is the former heavyweight champion of the world we're talking about here. 2-time. It was so nice, he did it twice. And he must be commended on, the way he fell apart against Andy Ruiz and came back, even though, and that's going to be a theme of video I'll put out later, of seeing things before they actually come to manifest into being a disaster. The flaws, where we paper over the cracks and ignore the clear and present danger, which I've been calling about Anthony Joshua and from way back from the Dillian White fight. I'm more concerned about now Joshua's headspace. Again, this is a former heavyweight champion of the world. A guy that if you asked him going into the rematch of the Ruiz fight, he was so certain that Rob McCracken was the man for the job. So certain. And people said he needed to make changes, and we were dismissed for saying that Joshua needed to make changes. Spool forward to 2021, and Joshua is now playing a game of no trainer left behind. He is the star of this movie, that if you've got a trainer and he's decent on some pads, Anthony Joshua will end up training with your trainer. So Anthony Joshua could turn up to a gym near you. This is it. Have you known in the history, or in the last 10 years, a fighter, a professional fighter, a former 2-time champion of the world, work out and train with so many different trainers in a short space of time? I mean, every week this geezer has got a new trainer he's working out with. Floyd Mayweather is working out with. Who else is he training? A whole list of trainers. But for me, what I do not understand, if you understand boxing, right, as Anthony Joshua says he is, and he's a student of the game, why the hell are you going to train with middleweight trainers? Is this Chris Eubank training with a trainer? Oh, I want to go and see what he trains like. He looks good. Eubank is a middleweight. You are freaking heavyweight. You need to be looking for heavyweight trainers. You cannot be trained with middleweight trainers. Heavyweight divisions are so different. You up Stacey McKinley, who is an expert in heavyweight boxing and training. You took James Ali Bashir. This boy is lost. He's lost. What? I mean, if I were his manager, what is the criteria? What are you looking for? Because if your brain is giving you a message that that's the way you're meant to train, and you're not totally clued upstairs as to what is necessary, then you're going to go and get any Joe Blow, pardon the French, or you're going to go to anybody, and just because you look good in some pads, you get a wrong trainer, you're liable to get yourself knocked out even quicker. And the sad thing about all this is going on is that the current unified heavyweight champion of the world is sitting back and watching. If I'm sitting back and watching going, what is this geezer doing? What the hell is the current unified heavyweight champion of the world? Just sit back, must watch going, what's this geezer doing? What is this geezer doing? What's he doing? Every week he's got a new trainer. It's becoming a joke. Well, it is a joke. You're not showing stability. You're not showing commitment. You've got all these different trainers. And guess what? If you're training with all these different trainers, they've all got different philosophies. Right? Let me give you an example, right? If I were to take you on a red wine tasting contest, yeah? And I put 10 different bottles of red wine in front of you. That's 10 different damn tastes of red wine, right? And you'll have the flavors in your mouth left from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Now imagine you're training with all these different trainers. Some of them are decent. Some of them were liable to get you knocked out. You already have a dodgy technique, right? Your technique is flawed. So you're going and sitting around all these other trainers and you're training with them. How do you know what works and what doesn't work? Who is there saying, look, bro, this is what we need. This is Alexander Usyk. This is who we're going to be fighting in a rematch, right? What did we get wrong here? What did we not do right? How can we put that right against Usyk? Because none of these trainers, you're spending a week here with that guy, a week with this guy, a week with that guy, a week with that day, a few days with this guy. That is to bring more damn confusion to your head. What Joshua should be doing is have one trainer, one team, set together and say, right, this is what we're going to do. I see him bulking up again. They not learnt the lesson that being big and big and bulky is not the answer. I don't understand it. I don't get it. So any fighter who's got a trainer, beware. Because Anthony Joshua, if he sees him on video, might pop up to your gym. And it's a joke. Let's see what people say now. Afternoon, Ingram. Glad to see you back. I hope you're well. I'm better, Joe. I'm better. Good evening, Shane. Hope you're well. Also, Adrian was waffling about steam rooms on Snapchat the other day, saying it could cure your COVID. Oh, for flip's sake. The fella's lost. Absolutely. He needs to focus on his stamina. The stamina could be a mental thing, not a physical thing. You understand? It could be a mental thing. Good evening, Boxing 24/7. He said he's been training Jonathan Banks. Should have stuck with either Jonathan Banks or Ronnie Stills. Banks. You mean the same Jonathan Banks, yeah, that was in a corner with Vladimir Klitschko against Tyson Fury and couldn't motivate him, he don't need a Jonathan Banks in his corner. He does not need a Jonathan Banks in his corner. Jonathan Banks is very passive. No disrespect to Banks, but he's a passive trainer. You look at him when, 2 examples. Banks, when he was training Klitschko, when he fought Bryant Jennings. Bryant Jennings was a rank amateur in compared to the experience of Klitschko. And Jennings was winning rounds. And Banks is there telling him, just box him, just box him. You're the better boxer, just box him. Now Stewart said, get after him, get behind him, double up a jab, back Jennings up, and get him out of there. He's giving Jennings space to maneuver to fight and to get himself into the fight and to get Jennings get his confidence up. Banks again, Vladimir Klitschko, Tyson Fury. At what point in that fight did Banks slap Klitschko or tell Klitschko, listen, this fight's running away from you and you're doing nothing? That's 2 fights, Jonathan Banks. So stop calling these names out with these guys that when you put the microscope on them, you will see that you've got to pick the trainer that's going to match the fighter, not the name. A lot of people like to pick names. What have they done? What has Banks done? What exactly did Banks do? Tell me. Jonathan Banks' experience of training elite heavyweights. Really? Really? That proves how much you know. It's how is this easy for hangers on to get into AJ's hair, like those jokers who brought in to teach him to outbox Usyk. Banks, their people are laughing. Of course they laugh. Because they know Banks is not the answer. Fair point, Ingram. Banks just, maybe not Banks. No, because you're going to have the same situation that you had already with Anthony Joshua, where, well done. Go on, Josh. Well done, Josh. Go on, Joshua. Box Josh. What is Banks going to do? What is Banks going to implement to Joshua? What is he going to give Joshua? You need somebody who's going to be able to bring out a side of Joshua that is lost. Joshua's lost at the moment. You need a guy who's going to be able to get into Joshua's head. Before we do all this training crap, all this garbage, this is not the problem. This is the problem. Joshua's mental state is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Not his physical. You're watching his muscles and stuff. That's a distraction. This is where the problem is. This is where the problem is with Joshua. And it started at that press conference with Usyk. And let me take it back further. It took you even back to when he was with Andy Ruiz. Here, his mental state. He seems to collapse. Look at the press conference of him and Ruiz. Damn well giving Ruiz the belt. Have you seen a heavyweight champion do such nonsense? And yet again, Usyk in England. He was treating Usyk like a tourist guide. And then when he came out to fight Usyk, he was coming out like some movie star. Like he was in a Rocky movie or something. So psychologically, Joshua needs a trainer, a mentor that's going to get him tuned in here. Not here, here. Because once he's got it here, this will flow naturally. But if you're just getting a trainer to train how to put the pads, forget it. Lost, done. It's mental that Joshua's going to have to overcome. See your point, Ingram. Good points, Ingram. You highlighted about Banks. He needs a father mentor. He does. You can see the boy's lost. What the hell are you doing at Chris Eubank training, watching Eubank train? Chris Eubank. Chris Eubank Jr. Better you take yourself and go and see Frank Sanchez train. Huh? Go and watch Frank Sanchez train. Go and watch Tyson Fury train. Huh? Go and watch some heavyweights train. Huh? Don't get it. What the hell are you doing with these middleweight trainers? I don't understand it. You're not a middleweight. He was getting his hands go, worried he don't have the engine. He's a warrior. Yep. But again, that's a psychological thing. I tell you, another person who had stamina issues, David Price. What does Price and Joshua have in common? They both can punch, but they both have zero defense. Joshua needs to work on his defense. He needs to work on his defense, right? He needs to work on his defense. And when he works on his defense, his offense becomes better. Yeah? If you can learn to block shots and then counter, you become a better fighter. When you have confidence in your defense, under pressure, you can roll, you can slip, and you can put yourself from slipping into countering and throwing shots. You are then in a better position. But if you've got no defense, I know you're just big and you're chugging along, then the minute someone backs you up, you're in trouble. And that's Joshua's problem. When you back him up, you don't know what to do. So it would be probably more advisable to work with him with a trainer who's going to sort his defense out. If he was studying boxing like he says he does, then all he had to do is just go back and make 10 years and look at Vladimir Klitschko fall apart against Ross Purity. And he was banging everyone out. And his style got remodeled. And then Manuel Stewart. So he's got to think to himself, well, all right. And then Klitschko got banged out again. Look at Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis was knocking people out. Then got knocked over by Oliver McCall. What did they do? Stewart took him in, bulked him up, then bulked him up with lots of muscle weight. He put weight on and then made Lewis be able to be more effective with his jab, effective with his right hand when he was throwing his punches, more selective when he threw his punches, and gave him a better defense. This is the thing. Joshua and his defense. So you got to think to yourself, if I'm his manager, I'm thinking, right, listen, bro, you need to get your head sorted. I don't know if you have to go to Nigeria. You need to get your head sorted. You need to get away from social media, complete shutdown. Away from social media, shut that shit down. When you're doing these video recordings, they're not helping you. As a matter of fact, you're making matters worse for you. You are actually building up, while you're running around with all these trainers, you're actually giving Alexander Usyk even more fire to kick your ass even faster. You are actually giving the enemy more fuel because you're weak. You're showing weakness. He's really beat you up already once. Yeah? He's beaten you up. Yeah, boxed you. He thumped you up. Yeah, punched you. Yeah, boxed you. Right? Little man, come on, come up, step up to heavyweight and beat you up. Yeah? You really seemed intimidated by him outside the ring. By flipping, posing with him and all this nonsense and treating him like he was a tourist in England. And then the champion comes and hands back your belt to you. I mean, to me, if the champion I knew was going to have automatic reach, handing the belt back to me, to me, that just shows, you know what? I kicked your ass before. Here's your belts back. I'm going to kick your ass again. That's the mentality of Alexander Usyk, a real winner. And Joshua needs to go back and actually think about, why am I in this sport? What do I hope to achieve? And how am I going to achieve those goals? How am I going to achieve those goals? And let's take a realistic look at me as a fighter, not Chris Eubank Jr., Canelo Alvarez, Floyd Mayweather, or anybody else in the world. Me, Anthony Joshua. What do I do well? What do I do not so well? Let's look at that Usyk fight. Let's look at that Ruiz fight. And let's see where I can improve. All right? How do I go about press conferences against guys that I think are going to kick my ass? Because obviously he felt that Ruiz was going to kick his ass, despite all that big man talk at the beginning. And then Usyk kicked his ass. And in both those press conferences, he didn't look great. And then understand, where can I improve? What does it take for me to improve? It's quite clear. Like, people talk about his stamina issues, but the stamina thing's a mental thing. David Price, stamina, mental thing. It's a mental hurdle. Let's give you an example. When you're on top of the game, when you are pushing the fight and you're blowing people out and you're in control of a fight, that's fine. But the mental draining of when you're in a fight against a guy that you know every time he clips you, he can knock you out, or every time you throw a punch, you've got to think about what's coming back. That's mentally exhausting. So then I would look back to what he's doing in training camp and how he's training. I remember Jim Watt used to say, how you train in the gym is how you're going to fight. How you train is how you fight. And Chris Eubank used to train, run, stop, autograph, run, stop, autograph. And that's why you can never fight for 3 minutes. You can never fight for 3 minutes. Fight for a minute and a half, pose. That was the way he fought. Because he trained that way. So it's what Joshua is doing behind the scenes in his training camps. How's he training? And what's his mental approach when he's training? So I'd be picking this all apart. I'd be asking him questions like the thing about panic attacks. Let me wheel this right back to you. And let's go back to Andy Ruiz's situation in America, where one of the journalists asked him the question about panic attacks. And he was bringing in a sports psychologist because he was scared of being knocked out. Let's take it back to there. Because and I'm talking from a coaching perspective, that's a root problem there. If you're scared of being knocked out, if that's your concern and your fear of being knocked out cold, where does that come from? So he has to treat that issue, because when he goes in and he does all that training, he goes into the fight, somewhere between him walking to the ring, in the ring, or actually on the stool, that is going through his head. So all you see, the training montage of him hitting pads and all that stuff, don't look at that. What's going on here? What's going on inside of that brain? That's the question. Because then, once we get to the root of that, then we're looking at getting the mind right first. And once the mind is right, then everything else comes into it. So teach him how to box off the back foot and all this stuff. That all stuff is all, for him, is what I see, it's all icing on the cake. The real problem is getting his mind right. Yeah? That he believes in what he's doing. Because you can do all this stuff and hit pads and look great. But that fear that's in here, he's got a term. My trainer used to say to me, fear is either your best friend or your enemy. As your best friend, it will make you faster, stronger, more alert, more agile. Your weakness, it will make you freeze. It will make you not be able to perform. It will make you unable to respond to coaches' instructions. And that's stamina is another one of those things as well, because you're panicking all the time. So if it's true about Joshua and the panic attacks and him scared of being knocked out, imagine you're in America at a press conference and the damn journalist is asking you about whether you're seeing a sports psychologist about your fear of being knocked out. That can't be a very good camp. That can't be a very good team to let such confidential information to slip out. And this is before he was fighting Ruiz. So all of those things are a concern. So while you call out all these names, just be aware, Joshua's problem isn't physical, it's mental. Not physical, mental. I don't question Joshua's heart. Got dropped heavily by Klitschko and got back up. Got knocked down several times by Ruiz and got back up. I don't question his heart, but I do question his approach. So let's see what people are saying now. Are we expecting too much? What's he saying? Are we expecting too much from AJ? Could it be he'll never be good to beat Usyk? No shame in that, to be honest. It's not that. It's not expecting too much. It's using the ability you have to your full potential. If you use all your ability to your full potential and you lose, okay, that's different. But we know that AJ didn't use the full potential that he has. So, yeah, because in that fight, he went to the body and he hurt Usyk to the body, but couldn't follow it up. He followed Usyk around the ring, but never shut the doors. When Usyk was, he allowed Usyk to get out from the sides every time. At no point in time when Usyk was circling to the left or to the right, did he try and close him down with hooks or stepped in or shut him down at the sides and continue to work the body. He hurt Usyk to the body on several occasions, but couldn't follow up with it. And then he allowed the little man to back him up. So anytime he had some success, he allowed the little man to fire back and back him up, by pushing the little man off him and going to him. He talks about Lennox Lewis as a clown. He needs to watch how Lennox Lewis dealt with smaller guys. I used the example of Zelko Mavrovic in terms of how Joshua had to go about Usyk. I know Malcolm Mavrovic and Usyk are different southpaw, different styles, but that's a smaller guy against a much bigger guy, right? Zelko Mavrovic, all right? And when Lennox allowed Mavrovic to back him up on the ropes, Lennox knew about it, yeah? Lennox had to literally push him off him and thump him up. Because if he didn't, Mavrovic was going to keep coming and coming and coming. He had to big man Mavrovic. Again, Francois Botha. I know it's not Usyk, but again, he never let a smaller man try and dictate the pace with him. He pushed the big man back. Evander Holyfield, another smaller guy from cruiserweight up to heavyweight. How Lennox handled a guy of that class. A guy who wanted to come in and rough him up. So when Joshua calls Lennox a clown, Joshua looks a bigger clown than when he lets a man move up from cruiserweight to heavyweight and thump him up the way he did. That stuff like that don't make sense to me whatsoever. And the people that think Lennox is a clown are people that don't want Lennox to get close to Joshua. And the reason why that is because Lennox will talk some sense into his head. That's what I think. Because Lennox is, I don't particularly like Lennox Lewis as a person, but as a champion, give him his dues. As a heavyweight champion in the world, you have to give him his props. And those are the sort of guys you need to be talking to. Vlad had stamina issues and didn't like you put on him. Difference with Vlad was I feel that his real pedigree, so his skills were good enough to balance the lack of chin. That's rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. It's absolute lack of his pedigree. That's absolute rubbish. Vlad and Joshua are very similar. Very similar. They both don't like it put on them. And the bottom line is this, that the difference between Vlad and Joshua is that there's a man called Emmanuel Stewart. That's the difference. He needs to develop a stiff jab to disrupt his opponent's game plans. Yes, I would say that. But again, that's all icing on the cake. Before he even gets that stiff jab, he has to know why he's throwing that stiff jab. And it goes back to that worried about getting knocked out. He might not throw a stiff jab. Example, I'm not saying this is truth. He might not throw a stiff jab because he thinks, if I put it stiff out there, I might leave myself vulnerable to getting caught with a shot and getting knocked out. I'm giving an example, right? But that's a mindset. So you've got to understand why he thinks the way he does before we start going about stiff jabs and movement and stuff. Yeah, I understand. Listen, you're scared of getting knocked out. So let me put it on you this way. To prevent you getting knocked out, if you do A, B, C, D, it's less likelihood of you getting knocked out. But if you do G, H, I, J, K, you will certainly get knocked out. And you're certainly going to get yourself knocked out if you keep seeing all these different middleweight trainers instead of you seeing a real bona fide heavyweight trainer with some experience that knows what it's about winning back a championship of the world. Huh? That fear caused him to burn up too much nervous energy, which comes from confidence, which comes from strong training camp. Now you know that's what I'm talking about right there. There's a man, or there's someone that knows what they're talking about right there. That's what we're talking about. AJ fans saying was massively underperformed rather than Usyk being that good. We've seen AJ look poor versus Dillian Usyk tack him, but some fans don't see this. AJ's fans. Who are these fans? Who are these fans? Well, no disrespect, but a lot of these fans expected AJ to blast Usyk out in 2 rounds. Okay? And they think he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. We're talking to them fans, then I'd rather not hear what they've got to say. I think you've got the fanatics, and then they're the supporters. Put the fanatics to one side. The supporters are able to see, look, AJ didn't look great. Is it he underperformed, or the standard of opposition is pretty decent? Dillian Whyte brought the fight to AJ. He knew AJ's mentality. He brought the fight to AJ. Ruiz brought the fight to AJ. Takam brought the fight to AJ. Usyk brought the fight to AJ. And talk about these are guys that are bringing the heat. The guys that people or AJ performed, are you talking about guys like when he knocked over Molina, or when he knocked over Brazil, or when he knocked out Gary, what's his name? What's this guy from Scotland? Or when he fought Charles Martin. Are we talking about those fights where Joshua performed against guys that came to stand up and get beat up? Are you talking about those guys? Is that performing against guys that come either for a payday or come without any ambition? I mean, there's a difference. So underperforming and meeting guys that have come to expose or to, you don't look that good when you're getting pushed onto the back foot. Joshua's never looked good when he gets pushed onto the back foot. He's a front foot fighter. Maybe he's a flat track bully. Maybe he's one of these guys that is an on-top fighter and a guy that likes it where he's the one throwing the punches and you're falling over, but starts to get unstuck when you start putting fire on him. Just feel AJ too late in career to make these fundamental changes in his game. Really? That's crap. AJ's best shout would be to fight AJ White. At least he looked comfortable at start. What? Bro, you need for 2021, 22, this sounds like Ruben Guerrero. You need to sit down for 22 and just watch some boxing, bro. AJ needs some home truths. Too many cheerleaders, AJ camp. Yep, that's true, Shane. Absolutely. First man out team has to be that guy shouting brilliant AJ every time AJ left arm. Yeah, of course. I think that's AJ Fernandez. But it could be also McCracken. The fact of the matter is, if you understand heavyweight boxing, heavyweights actually get better as they get older. Generally. Lennox was a better fighter as he got older. Klitschko became a better fighter as he got older. The heavyweights seem to get better as they get older. I don't know why that is. So AJ's not that old. 30, 32? He's not old in heavyweight terms. So you're thinking about Mr. Ruben Guerrero. You're thinking about, again, you're going from middleweight boxing or lightweight boxing and taking that mentality into heavyweight boxing. Heavyweight boxers, it seems, through their history, as they get older, they get better. Derek Chisora. There you go. Derek Chisora. Yeah, but he went back to Dave Coldwell. So you know what I think of Dave Coldwell. And if I heard that he wants to go and fight Wilder. Well, if you got beat up by Joseph Parker like that, God forbid what Wilder would do to him. God forbid. God forbid. So I really think with AJ, there needs to be literally a deep packing of this guy. Really deep packing of this guy. Coldwell brings the heat and gets you knocked out or beaten up real badly. That's what Coldwell does. Coldwell's a TV trainer. That is it. I'm sorry. I have to call it for what it is, a TV trainer. But AJ needs to be packing, and it looks a very sad state of affairs at the moment with him going around with all these trainers. It's not good. Name me one other fighter currently or in the last 10 years who has gone round so many trainers. Hello, Denise. How are you? And season's greetings to you. Thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. Coldwell doesn't bring the heat for adults. That's a joke. Just Denise, it's good to see you, and I'll be seeing you a little later when I do my end of year Facebook. True, Derek probably 30 years too old. Do you see what Derek has hard fight after hard fight after hard fight after hard fight, and forget Derek. Let's forget Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora is not the he's not the blueprint for the heavyweight division. He might be the blueprint for you, but not the heavyweight division. Sorry. I've got a little story to tell you about that. Charles Martin, who I've talked to a lot on Facebook. I remember to do an interview, and he said he didn't have time for it. Batiste wins. Who can teach that lights out Tony defense? Hey, listen, my friend, do you really want to be seeing AJ trying to do the James Toney defense? I mean, that will seriously get him knocked out. I mean, you want to get... Can you imagine AJ trying to roll like James Toney? With that stiff upper body? He'll get knocked out sideways. No. That stuff, you need to have flexibility in your body, man. Can't be teaching AJ that stuff. Can't be teaching AJ that stuff. No. AJ, stiff shoulder roll. But if you want somebody to teach that, it'd be an old school trainer that could teach that. An old school trainer. Old school trainer. But yeah. AJ needs to get help. Seriously. He seriously needs to get help. Because this isn't good. He looks in a bad way. I've got to shoot. Have a good New Year's, bro. Will do. Take care. He'll gas out just bending the waist so much. Yeah, I can't see it working for AJ. But he needs some form of defense. I don't know what yet, but he needs some form of defense. AJ's footwork's not too bad, actually. It's quite decent. So maybe his footwork would be somewhere I'd be looking at, getting him in and out of trouble. That'd be something. His footwork would be key. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to come to the end of this now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about AJ and seeing all these trainers. And I would like to actually someone sit down with AJ and ask him, okay, Anthony, of all those trainers you've met, what game plan have you got together to beat Alexander Usyk in the rematch? What did all those trainers you've been training with tell you the strategy to beat Alexander Usyk? He'll look like Josh Kelly whipping out the shoulder roll and getting wiped out 30 seconds after. But I told people, as soon as someone puts it on Josh Kelly, he's in trouble. And I remember telling Ruben Guerrero the same thing. Josh Kelly, he's got skill, he's got this, he's got that. I saw him fought Ray Robinson, and that night Ray Robinson exposed him. He ran out of ideas once he couldn't get Ray Robinson out of there. And I just said, you know what? The Avanesian is going to take him to school and beat the crap out of him and stop him. People say, oh, no, Josh Kelly. It's just the matchroom stable, just not that good. It never has been. What do you think of Fury White? Very quick, I'm going to do a video on that. I'll do a video on it. But, yeah, back in a minute, I'll talk Fury White. Don't forget to rate, subscribe. Don't forget to leave your comments as well. What do you think of AJ running around doing all these with all these trainers? And do you think there's any benefit in him doing that? And what sort of confidence does that leave in the likes of Rob McCracken and the rest that are in this current training camp? Would love to know what you think. So I'll be back, and I'll certainly talk about that 80-20 split with Fury and White. I'll be back in a moment. See you soon.